Former Japanese Prime Minister Koizumi and Nakasone in Guantanamo, Japanese policy. Former Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi and Yasuhiro Nakasone were taken last week by U.S. military police to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Japanese police and underworld sources both say. A person at Koizumi's office, when asked if this is true, said, "There's nobody here. My job is just to answer the phone." Even PR people were unavailable, she said. Spokespersons for the 101-year-old Nakasone were also unavailable at the time of writing this report. The head of intelligence for the cabinet of Japanese slave Prime Minister Shinzo Abe failed to respond to queries about this arrest. The arrests are part of the major crackdown on people relating to the Bush family, a Japanese right-wing source said. The arrests, if they took down, are long overdue. Koizumi is a murderer who handed over control of Japanese corporations to Zionists. Nakasone overruled Japan's health and welfare ministry to allow carcinogenic and hormone-disrupting chemicals to be put in common Japanese foodstuff and other products. Hopefully, they are now scribbling on their Satan-worshipping bosses. In any case, these developments, if true and not a disinformational trap, are just one of many signs that world events are heading for some sort of major showdown, as the U.S. corporate government's September 3rd international payments deadline looms with funding yet to be secured. Multiple sources agree. I was on a call with the U.S. last night. It certainly sounds that they are in their death throes, coordinate and fighting very hard. Dangerous time, a British royal confirmed. Corporate news stories about the U.S. trying to cash Asian in pro-Chinese government also point to some desperate move by the U.S. corporate government to secure financing. Then, of course, there's a highly visible U.S.-China trade war going on, with both sides slapping tariffs on almost the entire range of bilateral trade, as is being widely reported. A study by J.P. Morgan found that Trump's tariffs will cost the average U.S. household of $1,000 a year. That study was done before Trump raised the 1st September and 15 December tariffs to 50% from 10%, the Associated Press reports. What the AP fails to mention is that the tariffs are in reality aimed at paying off U.S. debt. The stakes are extremely high. If the U.S. lost the ability to borrow, U.S. per capita income of $66,900 would be slashed into a negative of $4,857, according to calculation by Bloomberg News. What Bloomberg failed to mention is that the U.S. still has the strongest military in the world, so nobody is about to enter the country and force Americans into debtor prisons. The only people who need to worry are the corporate owners of the U.S., not the American people. The only thing that's going to happen to the American people if their corporate overlords go bankrupt is that they will be freed from debt slavery. Of course, the corporate overlords are working overtime to convince people that this is a battle between communist China and democratic U.S., when in reality, the people of the world do not want either American fascist or Chinese communist master. Pentagon sources, for their part, are now saying that, in effect, a massive program against Zionists is in the work. With the pedophile blackmail scandal of Jeffrey Epstein, the state may be set for 11 September declassification, loyalty oath, access grabbed, expulsion, and military tribunals, as America become Judean-free, free of Jews, like China and Russia, a Pentagon source claims. The source warns that the death of Epstein-linked David Koch may be a warning to mega-group Jewish billionaires like Ron Lauder, Egat Brofman, Les Wexner, Steven Spielberg, and Morris Greenberg. Furthermore, the Jews' lack of loyalty to host nations and crimes, corruptions, and parasitism is now a politically correct national conversation after Trump called Jews disloyal, and people such as Bernie Sanders and Ian Ulmer called for cutting U.S. aid to Israel, the source continued. The Pentagon source also seemed to be lashing out in all directions by knowing that Trump ordering U.S. corporations to leave China is a massive stroke against globalists, Zionists, the deep state, and Wall Street to make America great again while increasing leverage for China to leave or demilitarize the South China Sea. The sources also hint that the U.S. military might occupy Greenland to create a U.S.-Russia condominium for the Arctic to keep China out. However, Russia FSB sources make it clear that Russia is not about to join the U.S. against China. The Russian FSB, Japanese military police, British embassy, Indian government, and other sources make it clear, as mentioned above, that the world wants neither Chinese nor American rule. The world also realized that the current global stewardship is a disaster and needs to be replaced. What to replace it was the topic of an informal emergency G20 meeting held at the end of August, say British and Pentagon sources. The Europeans, led by French and British, agree that highest priority needed to be given to stop what MI6 sources describe as homicide, the killing of all living things. The widespread condemnations of Brazilian fires, deliberately destroying the Amazon, were the most visible aspect of this agreement. However, MI6 sources note the same homicidal nutantics behind the Brazilian fires were setting off even bigger fires in places like Syria and Angola. The good news is that military forces have been sent to all of these places to put the fire out. This is a concrete sign. Russian FSB sources also say they have cracked down on illegal fishing and logging in Russian Far East. This was cut off funds for Japanese crime gangs, allied with the AB regime, they say. The other thing that happened at the emergency G20 meetings was that Iran foreign minister was invited to the meeting. This was another blow for the Zionists, according to Pentagon sources, who also said that the meeting was now being planned between Trump and Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. The U.S. military is trying to reach a deal with Iran, Russia, and Turkey to permanently remove the radical Zionist faction that wants to root the world from a country with borders ranging from Euphrates to Nile. A Trump-Khamenei summit would be a sign such a deal has been reached. The issue that has not yet been resolved is what to replace Zionist rule of the West with. The Chinese totalitarian model, with universal facial recognitions and Orwellian social credit score, is a non-starter. In a sense, the protesters in Hong Kong are making a valid point. However, they are either naive or else simply immoral mercenaries if they think the US offers a better alternative. They fail to realize that the US is, if any, worse than communist China. Ever since the year 2000 election was stolen and the 11th September was staged, the US has been a fascist neo-Nazi. Elections there are now decided not by the people, but by special forces fighting for competing cooperation mafia factions. These corporate factions have been lowering U.S. living standards by stealing from 9% of the population ever since the early 1970s, and when the U.S. went off for the gold standard. The White Dragon Society, WDS, believes a better model will be a new system based on the best practices in places like Singapore and the Scandinavian countries. These countries have a de facto combination of meritocracy and democracy combination, with a relatively free press. As a result, they also have the highest living standards on Earth, as well as healthy natural environments. The US military is pushing for a global currency reset and moving nations to a gold standard. Since they, like the Vatican, are the meritocracy, they also support the meritocracy. The WDS believes that a new age can be started with a jubilee, a one-off cancellation of all debt, private and public, a redistribution of ill-gotten assets. The the WDS, also believes a truth and reconciliation process is needed so that the world can wipe the scales clean and make a fresh start. If the current controllers do not step aside and allow for peaceful transition, though there will be, as the Pentagon threatens, mass success, deportations, chaos, and military rule as the old system goes bankrupt in the absence of a viable replacement. British royal sources who were briefed on the emergence of G20 meetings said the WDS proposal for the world to be ruled by a committee representing 7 or so regions is being debated. The regions being proposed are the Americas, Europe including Russia, China, India, Africa, East Asia minus China, and the Muslim world. In this proposal, decision would be reached by majority vote. Each region would have a veto that only applied to them. Thus, for example, if the majority decide to ban pork, the Chinese could veto this and continue eating pork in China.